Hey folks, welcome to Michael Mann Security Services, and this is providing close protection in faith-based environments. Quick, about 10 minutes to start talking about the concept of close protection. If you're providing close protection, and we'll get into what that is here shortly, then at your faith-based organization, your church, your synagogue, Christian camp, etc., then you need the same information that those close professionals out in the secular security world are receiving, and that's what this is about. Very short 5 to 10 minute presentations that are at no cost to you to teach you how to provide those professional close protection services, again, like the folks out in the secular world. Okay, so let's get started. This is part 1, protection objectives. Protection objectives. All right, so what is close protection? As we kind of start rolling through this and we start trying to figure out, or you guys start figuring out what this looks like, because you're probably already doing this. Close protection are a service or services provided by volunteers that actually provides faith-based organizations with an appropriate level of physical security, observation or surveillance that's on site, and some form of preemptive care. Again, close protection services is a service or services provided by volunteers, because most of you guys here are volunteers, but it could be somebody paid by the church or synagogue or mosque. It provides the faith-based organization with an appropriate level of physical security, observation or surveillance, and some form of preemptive care. Okay? All right, so faith-based environments. When I talk about faith-based environments or FBOs, faith-based organizations, here's what I'm talking about. This is an example. So it could be inside your sanctuary. It could be in a children's ministry. You're providing, these security or these services in a children's ministry. It could be some sort of faith-based camp or event. So we're talking about you're off-site at a Christian or a Jewish or Muslim camp, and you are there on some sort of a post, or you're roving, but you're still close to the assets, and you're providing physical security, observation, and of course a response to some sort of undesirable event like a medical emergency. So it could be a camp off-site, or you could be hosting, if your facility is big enough, your church or synagogue, your mosque, you could be hosting some sort of a camp on-site. A lot of large churches in the U.S. will host Pine Cove or Barefoot, and so those are 2 like camps that travel throughout the country to the churches, and that can be an example of a faith-based environment. A conference, we're doing this next week for the Southern Baptist Convention. We're going to put some videos up for you guys so you can see what that looks like. A memorial service, someone that attends your church or your synagogue or mosque, they have passed away, and there's a memorial service, and you're there providing those physical protection services. And then, of course, it could be any interior, exterior fixed post, on Sundays, Wednesdays, Saturdays, whenever you guys are worshiping, or there needs to be some sort of a close protection system in place. All right, so very quickly, we're going to talk about protection objectives. Take notes. Obviously, some of you guys may receive this recording, but just like the executive protection specialist, the close protection specialist, or what some folks call bodyguards, and there really is a difference. You guys are providing those same services when you're sanctuaries, you're standing at post. And so the protection objectives for professionals that are doing those services or providing those services for you guys, that's going to be for these faith-based environments or organizations. You're protecting your assets, so your pastor, the people inside your congregation, the children, whoever's present, you are protecting them from, number 1, intentional harm. Most time we think about intentional harm, that is going to be some sort of a human-based event. So that could be an active shooter. It could be someone that decides to assassinate someone inside. It could be, or it's just some sort of physical attack. And it could be with firearms, could be with an edge weapon, could be explosive, could be physical, like it could be with our hands. So when we talk about intentional harm, that's what we're talking about. Unintentional harm is probably what you're going to deal with the most. These are these things we normally don't plan for. We can't. So these can be things like medical emergencies, slip, trips, and falls. Believe it or not, when we talk about deaths in the United States of America, the majority of folks are really the leading cause of death in the United States of America is heart disease. Number 2 is cancer or cancer-related deaths. And number 3 are going to be accidents, which include slip, trips, and falls. So the unintentional harm is probably the protection objective that you are going to be on guard against or have to respond to the most. Okay? And then, of course, I say embarrassment or interruption, especially for our faith-based environment. So embarrassment could be something, we're trying to stop the pastor from being embarrassed. Maybe it's a congregation member. Maybe it's a personal matter. Somebody shows up to to protest or do something or say something to embarrass them in front of the congregation. Interruption could also mean someone is trying to interrupt the service because they don't agree with something the pastor has said. So these are your protection objectives as a close protection professional inside those faith-based environments or organizations. Now, this is an example of a lack of protection, obviously, because this priest gets stabbed. But this is an intentional threat. This is an example of one. This is where a priest is attacked by someone that comes into church. I think this was over in Europe, and he is stabbed. The priest did survive, but this might be something really low likely here in the United States. I would think that our Jewish friends are probably a little bit more at risk than probably the Christian ministries are here. But this could happen. Again, low risk for most of us, but it does occur, so we want to cover it. So this is an example of something we would protect someone against in an intentional threat, obviously.
A service and caught the horrific moment when a man rushes the altar and stabs the priest. The Reverend Claude Brow was about to read the gospel. The 77-year-old appears to realize what's happening and takes off running. The shocked crowd shrieks while people approach the man and try to corner him. Eventually, security guards took him down. It happened Friday morning at Canada's largest church, St. Joseph's Oratory. Brow was slashed twice in the chest. He was taken to the hospital with only minor injuries because he says the knife broke during the attack. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau weighed in on Twitter, saying in part, quote, "Father Claude Brow, Canadians are thinking of you and wishing you a swift recovery." Police arrested the 26-year-old suspect, who they say they're familiar with. As of now, his motive is unclear.
And that police response, of course, which is why we're providing close protection services and other physical security services for these faith-based environments, because police response is always going to be delayed. And in the majority of these attacks, whether it's active shooter, which is an intentional threat, or something like this where someone's trying to attack a priest, a pastor, whoever, by the time the police get there, it is going to be over. This is very quickly our unintentional threats. This happened at a church. Doesn't say where the church is. Sounds like it's somewhere down here in the South. This is where a pastor is preaching and goes into cardiac arrest. I'm going to play a little bit of this because this is an extended video, and then I'll stop it and then just talk about some of the main points here. Again, this is probably the most likely thing as protection professionals or close protection professionals that we are going to have to respond to, but it's important that you know this, okay? This is actual video of the cardiac arrest, folks. This is not a depiction.
I suffered a cardiac arrest. This is due to a heart condition, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And for about 22 minutes, no, I had no pulse, flatline.
I looked at him and his face was just gray. It wasn't pale. It was just gray. And I could just tell that something was wrong.
And he just fell. When the phone, and he just fell on the floor.
Okay, and so he is having difficulty breathing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but you did say he's gasping for air. He has not stopped breathing completely.
Well, hang on, Sean.
Yeah, just check for
breathe, baby, breathe. Okay, he just quit like after. Breathe.
Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is a cardiac condition where part of the heart muscle is enlarged, and it usually causes blood flow to leave the heart in an impaired fashion.
You know, most people are never diagnosed with this condition. They don't find out about it. Their families do, because it's a silent killer.
Couple things that you noticed back in the video in the beginning, and this is extended, so we'll just stop it there. As they're calling 911, no one is trying to, obviously you don't see anybody giving chest compressions. No one's got the AED. By the time they call, he is not breathing. He's going into cardiac arrest, which means legally, physically, he is dead. Heart stopped beating, brain has stopped functioning. And so that gasping that they're describing is not breathing. And so you guys certified CPR and they're providing these services already know that. And so obviously you can see the pastor did live. He did survive. But we have about 4 minutes to respond as protectors if we were trying to respond to cardiac arrest to the point to where obviously we need to try to minimize brain damage. And that's what CPR and knowing exactly where that AED is. That's why those are important. So he did live. It looks through the grace of God. It looks like he was able to live. You saw that. But again, some things to consider when we talk about providing those close protection services. Now, this is embarrassment or interruption. This is John MacArthur, so I don't think John MacArthur gets embarrassed very specifically anytime anything to do with the gospel or when someone tries to interrupt him. This is a situation where John is interrupted at a service, and then he starts to explain it, why this person was upset. But I just want you to see this because this would be our third and fourth protection objective, which could be embarrassment or interruption. In this case, it's just interruption. John is not embarrassed, obviously.
And they're cutting each other. If you don't believe in prophets, you are looking at one. God to mercy on you and teach you the truth. Your doctrine of cessation is an error from the gospel. It's an error. I have been sent to tell you it's an error. For the unbeliever, repent of your sins. Sort of takes the edge off my what he was saying, you heard what he was trying to say that spiritual gifts and tongues and prophecies and prophets and all of that cease is heresy. And the doctrine of cessation is wrong, and the he is a prophet. And there's a text in 1 Corinthians that says, "Let the Spirit."
And so John is explaining, of course, what this person that interrupted the service is talking about. But in this case, and again, we're not talking about using any force that we have to use. If we have to stop that, we need to be reasonable. Reasonable force, especially for citizens and police officers, is that minimal amount of force necessary to overcome an opposing force. And so I don't think he gave up a big fight. He just wanted to say something, but John is explaining what happened. So this would be something where not because he was they're going to harm the pastor or because it's embarrassing, because as you can see, of course, John MacArthur is explaining what this person was saying or what they believed, but it's the case of where it just disturbs the service and it interrupts worship. And so something else that we would want to protect our faith-based organization and environment against. All right, folks, if you have any questions, send us an email, michaelmannsecurityservices.com. You can go with send me an email at contact@michaelmannsecurityservices.com. Or if you've got other questions or comments, send it to Scott M, SCOTTM, at michaelmannsecurityservices.com. We'll answer them for you. Be on the lookout on our Facebook page and some other communications where I'm going to be talking about equipment and showing you some things to prepare yourself for protecting the faith-based environments from those intentional threats, from those unintentional threats, and of course from embarrassment or some sort of interruption. So be on the lookout for those and announcements in our Facebook page. And we will see you next week for another topic on providing close protection operations in faith-based environments. Again, we need these as bad as that executive protection professional that's out there protecting high net worth individuals or politicians or any other public figure. We need this professional information just as bad. We are doing the same thing, or we are conducting those same services. See you next week, and contact us if you need us or have a question. Thanks again.